Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go. Here are your hosts, Angelos and Mo.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. I'm Angelos. Today we're speaking with Tina Walsh, who is a specialist in property sourcing and compliance specialist. Property investors do not have the time or the expertise to source investment properties sometimes for themselves, so they employ the services of Tina Walsh and others. Tina has also written the best-selling book titled Property Sourcing Compliance, Keeping You on the Right Side of the Law, which helps people looking at how to be compliant when property sourcing. Hello, Tina, and thank you for joining us today.
Hello, it's lovely to be with you.
Great. We're in the lovely Borrington Hotel and Spa, nice 5-star hotel, so as the people listening and watching at home will be able to appreciate what a great view we've got here. So before we start talking about sourcing property, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how your journey led you to where you are today?
I was a police officer many years ago for over 14 years and had to leave because of injury on duty, so I had to retrain. And I accidentally fell into the healthcare sector and spent quite a few years in the healthcare sector and ended up sourcing healthcare businesses that wanted to sell. So I was kind of sourcing, but even though it was in the healthcare sector. My husband and I, he was also in the police. We always wanted to start a business that we could run together. We'd always been really interested in property. And so I'd listened to a guy called Kevin Green at an event at the Excel in London and been impressed by him and his talk about being able to invest in property and dragged my husband kicking and screaming to one of Kevin's events. And from there, we went on to Kevin's mentoring course, and that was where it all began, I guess, really. Because Tony and I had a bad experience investing in property some years ago and lost some money on it, we weren't keen on actually physically investing ourselves, but still love the property sector. And Kevin and his team had said to us, well, why don't you look into property sourcing? And I said, what's that? And they said, go away and research it. And in January 2012, that was where it all started.
So Kevin Green, he's quite a famous speaker, isn't he?
He is, yeah. Quite well known, I think. Kevin.
He's a very established speaker. So sourcing property can be a good business model in itself, finding properties which are below market value or not on the market at the moment, etc., etc. What tips do you have for someone looking to start looking at creating their own property sourcing business?
I think the first tip is to make sure that you are operating compliantly and legally. And I think as time goes by, that will become more and more important with the changes in the law and the tightening of the regulations around estate agency type businesses. But also deciding how you want to source, whether you want to source the deal first or whether you want the investor source and do as we do, which is source to order. And get all of your contracts and everything in place. Make sure that you understand the sector that you're operating in so that when you start chatting to investors, you come across as a professional business that hopefully investors want to work with.
Yeah, and like you say, it's very important to be compliant because a lot of people can set up overnight and pretend to be sourcers, but the law states very clearly that you need to be registered with the ICO and all these other organisations to make sure that you look after not only yourself but also your client and their funds, etc., etc.
That's correct, yes. It is a business that you can set up fairly quickly, dependent on whether you're operating full-time or part-time. But setting it up compliantly is very important, not just from your perspective, as you said, Angelos, but also from the investor's perspective, in so much as you're providing a professional service. And as a professional, we should be operating professionally and creating a much more safer environment for an investor to operate and invest through.
So I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball at you now, Tina. I know you don't know what's coming, but playing devil's advocate here, there's a lot of talk, especially in political circles, where the government is trying to encourage, I guess, buy-to-let investment to dwindle and encourage home ownership, especially with people who haven't been able to buy properties before. What is your view when someone could potentially say, Tina, you're almost making a commodity out of property here by sourcing property as opposed to encouraging first-time buyers to buy these properties? Or do you cover first-time buyers as well as buy-to-let investors?
We cover anything from a one-bedroom flat to an 88-acre development site up to now, and we have people who want to just purchase one property as much as they want to create the largest property portfolio in the world. It doesn't make any difference to us. We don't tend to buy source residential property for people just to live in, as in your first-time buyer market. But don't forget, investors can go to an estate agent equally as come to us, and the estate agent doesn't mind who you are or what you're looking for. But we work for the investor, so we have your interests, your best interests at heart, whereas the estate agent actually has the seller's best interests at heart and wants the highest price, whereas we try to get the best value price for you and the strategy that you're investing in. So there is definitely a role for us out there, but I think we have to be much more professional in the way that we put ourselves forward, and we fulfil that role going forward.
I like that answer. So, people don't. I know there's a bit of a stigma attached to estate agents, but the government isn't necessarily coming down hard on them. So, and we can discuss all day about the ethics and of political involvement in the property market, whether it's a good or a negative thing. So, you said about how looking at some of the legislation, the regulation about becoming a property sourcer. Can you tell us a little bit about how to become a compliant property sourcer? What could be some of the key points that people need to at least consider before they start going down this road?
Okay. There are 3 key registrations that have to be taken into consideration. The first one is a property ombudsman, of which there are currently 2 that you can register with, which is the property ombudsman, or the TPO, and the PRS, or property redress scheme. You must be registered with either of those to be on your way to compliance. As you mentioned earlier, you need to register with the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, with regard to data protection, GDPR now in, as we're all aware, and also HMRC for anti-money laundering supervision. Now, a lot of people think that once you're registered, that is it, but actually it is the tip of the iceberg. And there are a lot of other things that you have to have in place, such as risk assessments, policies and procedures, and ongoing training records, believe it or not, which not many people are aware of. But it's not a difficult thing to go through, it's just a step-by-step process. But as I say, the 3 key things are the registrations, but then you have to show ongoing, every day, that you are dealing and working with your clients compliantly and legally. And that means also as far as how you're marketing properties as well. How many have we seen on Facebook where they say this is a fantastic investment opportunity with a 30% on return on investment? We are not FCA regulated. We cannot give investment advice. So we need to be careful as to how we market our deals in the open marketplace.
I belong to several property groups, as I'm sure you do as well, on Facebook, and sometimes you see investors coming out with, like you say, this amazing deal of the century, 30% below market value, yours only today for $29.99 or whatever it may be. Is that necessarily the right way to advertise a property on Facebook? Are there certain rules that the FCA try to enforce when it comes to advertising deals and these kind of things online?
Strangely enough, the FCA aren't really interested in the estate agency sector. But what you need to be aware of is that you have to be FCA regulated if you're going to give investment advice, such as those that work in the finance sector. So we can't give investment advice. So we always work directly with our clients, and we, what I call, source to order. So our clients tell us what it is that they want, and they also tell us how they work out whether a deal will fit their purpose or not. So we never go to them and say, we believe this is a good investment deal. We go to them and say, we believe that this fits your criteria. Is this what you are looking for? Let us know if this is suitable. So I think it's understanding the difference between supporting the investor to get what they want and not advertising something and saying, this is a really, really great deal, come and get it now before it goes.
Because that could come back to bite you later on.
Severely,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's a question for you then, Tina. What's been the most unusual request you've had from someone looking to invest in property? Well, what's the most unusual kind of deal that they've been after?
Unusual, I'm not sure that anything has been particularly unusual. One lady came to us that is local to us, and she wanted an historic building to run her company out of. That we hail from Lancashire, if you haven't already guessed from the accent. She wanted something that spoke Lancashire because her business is called Lancashire, and it's sort of a marketing portal for companies. And she wanted something that sort of reflected the ethics of her business and the location of the business. We didn't manage to find anything, but she was looking for something that was inherently Lancashire, what you would look for around in Devon, a Devon Roundhouse or something.
Yeah, there's a few historic buildings around here,
Yeah.
and quite a lot of new builds, which probably won't be here for another 30 years.
No, as long as this building they were in, anyway. I don't.
Yeah, this is a beautiful place. Goes back to Tudor times.
It's absolutely stunning. Is the building.
So this is the Borrington Hotel and Spa. We don't get paid for advertising these guys, but you may want to look it up on Google because it looks absolutely beautiful.
It's stunning.
It's a
stunning
lovely
building.
5-star place. Okay, so looking out further into the future, then looking into your crystal ball from a property sourcing point of view, this is obviously going to be quite important to yourself. But where do you see the property market heading in the next 5 years?
I'm glad you mentioned crystal ball, because as far as the rise or fall of the property market, we'd all love to know whether it's going to increase by 25-50% in the next 5 years. None of us really know. But I think regardless of what the market does, there are always investors there that want to invest in property, in development sites or in the commercial market. So from a source's perspective, I think we have a job role regardless of what the market's doing. From a property sourcer's perspective, I can see a tightening up of the regulations and the rules around the estate agency type businesses, possibly even within the next 5 years, regulations coming in whereby we have to prove that we have a certain level of knowledge before we can operate in the sector, possibly. Certainly, I think with us being more heavily monitored by HMRC for money laundering and possibly even the ICO for GDPR and data protection. And we chatted earlier about how we market properties and what we say, and not misleading people, not necessarily telling lies, but not putting in things that are pertinent to an investor should they purchase something.
Leading them down the garden path. Yeah, this is the investment
to get the
of a
fee
lifetime.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think the problem with that is that a lot of property sources come into property sourcing because, per se, they don't have the money themselves to invest. And they're taught on the Maria Love courses that it's a quick way to get into the property market, and it is, don't get me wrong. And it's a great way to get into the property market and to learn from people who are more experienced as well. But you have to be aware that it isn't all roses around the door, and you have to really look at providing a professional service to be able to, in the future, I think, go forward, because I think a lot more investors are going to become savvier as to what property sources should look like, at least a good one, and start asking great questions of property sources upon first meeting them. And if you can't answer those questions, then I think a few people are going to be out of a job role within the sector.
And I've spoken with various property sources over the years, and I've used some myself. And you can always tell which ones are the professional ones and which ones are the fly-by-night ones. And as an investor, you want to try and avoid those as much as possible, which you just don't know. If you're investing tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds, you don't want to make a mistake.
No, you don't, because some investors do lose the money, and I do spend a little bit of my time trying to help them to try to get deposits back from sources that have taken a deposit or a reservation fee. Something has gone really badly wrong with the project, i.e. it didn't do what it said on the tin from the advertisement, and they've asked for the a refund of the reservation fee and been refused it, which it's unfair, but it really shouldn't be happening in the sector either. But yes, it's something that I think we need to see a lot of changes in.
Okay. I mentioned your book earlier, Property Sourcing Compliance. Mo and I, we've just spent the weekend just putting the final touches on our draft before we sent it out to our peers. And it's been an exhausting 4 months of writing, but we're really pleased with what's come out. Can you just tell us about your book writing process? How did the book come about to begin with?
From the moment that I started researching how to be a property sourcer back in January 2012, with my police background, I guess the first thing that I looked at was the legalities of it and how to set up the business legally. And so for the first 10, 12 months from January 2012, I was researching the legalities and putting everything in place that needed to be in place. writing the book was always at the forefront of my head because I realised early on that an awful lot, a very, very high percentage of property sources, not because they didn't want to be, but because there wasn't anyone teaching out there. There were no resources to teach them how to be compliant. Most of them were operating non-compliantly. And if they were aware that they had to be compliant, then they would make every effort to be. There's always going to be a small percentage that don't see why they should. And the book was in my head for 2 years. But I said earlier that I worked and operated in the healthcare sector for a while. I decided 2.5 years ago that that wasn't for me anymore. It was taking me further away from where I wanted to be. So I pulled away from the healthcare sector. And at that point, it seemed like a great time for me to sit down and write the book, but run the sourcing business at the same time. I allocated 6 months to do it. It actually took me 18. And I took my foot off the sourcing pedal. We had 3 deals in the pipeline, but all 3 deals fell over.
Yeah.
So for 2 years, we had no income in the business whilst I sat there playing J.K. Rowling and writing this book and living the life of Riley. It took a lot longer than I thought. There was a lot more involved, but I actually got a professional mentor to help me pull it together. And my daughter helped me with the images for the book cover and everything else going along with it. So I had a lot of help.
Yeah.
It was a great process to go through, and I'm really glad that I did. But also there were some moments where I was tearing my hair out and wondering why on earth I decided to do it. I don't know about you guys, but it's not as easy as you think, is it, writing?
No, there's been a few grey hairs developed since we began, that's for sure. Mo's hair stays the same. I don't know what his secret is. We always ask everyone, sorry, just very quickly, your book's available on Amazon?
It is on Amazon, yes.
Yeah. So we always ask everyone, what does success mean to you?
I think success means to me is that I can come and sit here with you and sit in this beautiful hotel and chat to you about something that I'm incredibly passionate about in a beautiful area of the country that I don't get to visit very often. And I have the time to be able to do it without me saying I have to take time off work or work out whether I can take annual leave or not. It's that I can go around and do what I want to do when I want to do it, with who I want to do. And for me, that is the greatest pleasure. And it doesn't feel like a moment's work at all. I don't know about you, but it doesn't work for me. Yeah. It's just great fun.
Yeah, it's that sense of freedom, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time today, Tina. What is the best way for people to get in contact with you?
My direct email address is tina@SPS, that's Sierra Papa Sierra, UK.co.uk, or our new website has just been launched, which is our new compliance and training website and training platform, which is www.getpropertycompliance.co.uk.
That's brilliant. Thanks again, Tina.
You're very welcome, and thank you for the invitation. It's been wonderful.
No problem at all. So we want to know your thoughts on property sourcing and whether you've used a property sourcer before. So please send us an email at hello@yoursuccesspodcast.com or get in touch on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for listening to Your Success Podcast. Please click subscribe, leave us a review, and we look forward to your comments on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe to our book launch at tiny.cc/yourbook. I've been Anglos, and see you again on the next exciting episode of Your Success Podcast.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.